Okay, let's unpack this. Today, we're doing a deep dive into a specific document that you actually shared with us.
hmm
It's called the Blueprint for Community Crime Safety.
A really foundational piece of policy.
It is. And our mission today is to, move beyond the abstract ideas and really pull out the core priorities of this framework.
And not just what they're trying to do.
Exactly. We want to understand how the document itself is designed to mandate that action gets taken.
That's a great focus. We're going to zero in on one part, Section 11, which is all about crime and safety.
Like,
And for anyone looking for a shortcut to understanding this whole strategy, the secret is really decoding the language. That's where you find the DNA of the plan.
right. And the roadmap for this section lays out three big areas. We have crime prevention,
hmm
technology and policing, and community safety. They're all intertwined.
Those are the pillars.
But the really surprising thing, the little nugget we found, is in the instructions given to the authors themselves. We're calling it the trick.
Ah, yes, the trick. It's this explicit linguistic instruction. Before anyone even writes a single policy, they're told they must use modal verbs.
So words like must, should, could, need to.
Exactly. It sounds like a dry grammar lesson, but in the world of policy, this is basically an action-forcing mechanism.
Okay, so this is where it gets really interesting for me.
Okay.
Why? Why does a simple verb become the central theme for a whole safety mandate?
Because it immediately tells you that this blueprint is fundamentally action-oriented. It's not a description of past problems or, a suggestion box.
It's prescriptive.
It's fiercely prescriptive. It uses that language to draw a clear line between the non-negotiable foundations and then the areas that are open for a bit more
I
innovation.
guess if they want mandatory action, why not just use simple commands? Mandate funding for new tech or establish a community board. Why build in the flexibility of should and could?
That nuance is everything. It
Mhm.
really is. And it points to a very sophisticated understanding of how governance actually works.
Right.
A document that's just pure commands would be way too rigid. It would be destined to fail because it couldn't adapt to different cities, different resource levels.
Like it couldn't scale.
It couldn't scale. So by requiring these modal verbs, they establish a very clear hierarchy of implementation.
So the musts, those are the absolute foundational requirements of the things every single jurisdiction has to do no matter what.
Exactly. Those are the mandatory elements. They define the core philosophy. If a policy must be implemented, that's the baseline. Everyone's held accountable to that. But then you get should and could.
And that's where the wiggle room comes in.
Yes. A should implies a highly recommended path. It's a best practice, something to strive for when the resources are there.
And could.
Could opens the door for innovation, pilot programs, cutting-edge ideas. It allows the blueprint to mandate the core strategy, but also, encourage forward thinking. It's policy architecture built right into the verb choice.
That insight really sets the stage perfectly. So we know the framework demands action, but tiered action would turn to the content, starting with crime prevention.
Mm-hmm.
That's the proactive part, right?
Yeah.
Trying to stop problems before they even begin.
It's the strategic cornerstone.
Yeah.
And the mandate here isn't just more police. Because the blueprint is so prescriptive, it demands policies that are really broad, that cut across different sectors.
Yeah.
Well, the authors clearly realize that crime isn't just a policing problem. It's often an outcome of social and economic conditions.
So if a community is writing its policy using this blueprint, what kind of must does that imply? What goes beyond just traditional enforcement?
The must applies to the structures for collaboration. That's the key. It's not enough to just suggest they work together. The blueprint must mandate, for example, that the police department, the local school board, and the housing authority are all required to participate in, say, a shared data platform or a planning committee.
So the policy isn't just about the programs. It's defining the required infrastructure of how they cooperate.
Precisely. You see, if they just suggested a local job training program, using the word could, that's easy to ignore when budgets get tight.
Of course.
But if you mandate that the local economic office must dedicate a certain percentage of its resources to programs for at-risk youth, well, that's action forcing. It makes prevention mandatory infrastructure.
That really changes how you look at these documents. It's about organizational structure just as much as outcomes. Okay, let's shift to the second pillar, technology and policing.
The modern toolkit.
Right. And making it a mandated pillar suggests it's no longer just optional equipment.
Absolutely not. Including technology as its own pillar signals that, policing has entered the 21st century. This is where you often see the verb need to.
Signifying a prerequisite.
A prerequisite resource, yeah. The framework needs to ensure officers have the right tools, but it's about way more than just buying drones or cameras.
I can just hear the city councils groaning already.
Mm.
I mean, doesn't making tech a mandatory pillar put a huge financial burden on smaller, maybe less wealthy communities? Does the blueprint just ignore that resource gap?
That's a critical challenge, and the tiered language is how they try to address it. The blueprint must mandate the structures for ethical deployment.
Okay, so things like training.
Things like standardized data protocols or requiring extensive training before any new equipment gets used, those are the non-negotiables for fairness and accountability.
So the must is about the policy around the tech, not necessarily the specific gadget itself.
For the most part, yes. Then the specific tech is layered on top. So, for example, all jurisdictions must have a system for efficient digital recording. That's a baseline.
Got it.
But implementing, say, predictive data analysis software that could be left to larger cities with the budgets and the staff for it, the framework dictates modernization, but it allows flexibility on the scale of that modernization.
That synthesis works. Required modernization, but balanced with real-world constraints. Which brings us to our third topic, community safety. This feels like the critical human part of the puzzle.
It is.
If we have the big strategy with prevention and the tools with technology, community safety must be about how those are applied effectively on the ground.
It's the essential foundation for legitimacy. You said it perfectly. If prevention is about systems and tech is about efficiency, then community safety must focus on the relationship between residents and safety providers.
But how do you mandate something like trust or partnership? Isn't there a risk that by making this a prescriptive tiller, it just forces engagement to feel like another bureaucratic checkbox?
That is the inherent tension, and it's why the layered language is so important here. The document must mandate the mechanisms for engagement.
Okay, like what?
Things like mandatory citizen review boards or regular publicly recorded community forums. That sets a bare minimum for transparency.
And the actual success of that relationship, that's a should or a could.
Exactly. Policies could then be put in place locally that, for example, offer shared decision-making power to neighborhood groups on how resources are allocated. The blueprint recognizes that safety isn't something that's done to a community.
It has to be done with them.
It must be. Without genuine community buy-in, the most advanced technology or the best prevention strategies, they're just prone to failure. They lack legitimacy at the street level.
That makes perfect sense. So this third pillar is a balancing force. It makes sure the strategies from prevention and the tools from technology are applied through a filter of accountability.
And that's the powerful synthesis we can extract for you. The blueprint is an action-oriented framework driven by these modal verbs, and it targets 3 connected areas.
Right. Prevention sets the strategy.
Technology mandates the modern tools.
And community safety mandates the partnership and accountability you need for it all to work.
That's it.
And the key nugget we really want you to walk away with is this. Next time you read any policy document, pay attention to the language of action, the difference between a must and a could.
Because understanding that reveals the intended urgency, the resource allocation, and the flexibility or rigidity, that's going to dictate how it all rolls out in the real world.
And if we connect this back to the bigger picture, we want to leave you with this final thought. If a blueprint explicitly tells you to use words like must and could, just imagine the difficulty for a local government.
Yeah.
Which vital community services need to be mandatory for everyone, and which new ideas could be experimented with locally. How does the very language force administrators to confront that tension between universal standards and local autonomy?
It definitely changes how you read every policy document from here on out. Thank you so much for sharing the source material for this deep dive.